See us, we don't dare for the long run. Omo, we don't take for the matter. Every challenge just make the flavor strong. It make the flavor join better. We be seasoned. Yeah, the grace just dey plenty. We be seasoned. Our story don't sweet like 20. No be child's play, we the lead now. We be seasoned. Future sweet, we don't see them now. Tell them, we be seasoned.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Seasoned. It's your girl, Ajwa. Greetings from Nairobi again. I'm still here. My time is coming to an end very soon, and I can't believe how quickly time has gone, and it just baffles me that, you know, I can't even imagine that a few months ago this wasn't even in my bingo card for things to do, that experiences that will come my way. I was just aiming to be, just make it through the financial year at work, hopefully get promoted within the local firm. And yeah, just have just a normal life. Like I said last week, I was planning what I was going to do for my birthday locally. I was planning that, okay, at the end of the year I'm going to go on leave, and I was actually planning, like, I was like, oh, what am I going to do for the holidays and all of that. And I didn't anticipate that there'll be so much travel in my life, and I thought I heard a fly. I have a thing for flies. I cannot stand flies. Like, I have this strong hatred for flies. So I got into my apartment this afternoon, and when they come and clean my apartment, they leave the front door open as they're cleaning. So, flies will come in and all of that. So by the time I got in and I was working out, I just saw this fly buzzing around. So thankfully, I bought some bug spray and I went to town on that little bugger. And I thought I heard it. I thought I heard another one, but I just realized that it was a sound from outside. I think it's a vehicle or something. Anyways, but back to my little story. I couldn't not have imagined that my life would be here at this moment. And as I was thinking about what to talk about today, I was throughout during my workout, I was like, okay, so what can I talk about? And then all of a sudden, I just had this thought, and I would like to accredit it to the Holy Spirit, that it just said, talk about your secondment. So I had mentioned in, I think, the first episode of the season that I was going to talk about how I got to this point. And so I might as well share my story. Let me take you way back a few years ago. During, I guess it was like in the latter stages of COVID, I was done with Canada. I was in Canada at the time. I was done with Canada. I was over it. The year before, I'd been to Cape Town for my cousin's wedding. And I'd always, like, as far back as I think the second time I went to South Africa, I had this love for the place and I'd wanted to move to South Africa. So as far back as 2012, I remember that I wanted to move to South Africa. And at the time that I was planning, I wanted to move, My dad was then as the senior partner for the firm that I work with. And he was very good friends with the senior partner for the firm I work with for the Southern African office and for the South Africa office. So we had actually, my mom and I had just come back from South Africa, having visited with that man and his family because we became very close. Both our families became very close. So we wanted to go to SA on holiday, and he said, "Why don't you guys come and stay with us?" So we went to stay with him. And after that trip, I was ready to like pack up my life and move to South Africa. So I remember my dad had a conversation with a guy, but it didn't happen. So I opted to move back to Canada because I was at a stage where I wasn't happy in Ghana. I'd been in Ghana since I believe 2007. I was ready to just leave. A new government had come in. Things were not looking very great for the country. I just felt stagnant. I was tired of living at home. I realistically couldn't afford to move out of my parents' home. Just everything just seemed so bleak, to say the least. So I was just ready to like move. And so when that opportunity didn't come, I just decided that, you know what, it's just easier to go back to Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm born there. My siblings are there. So, let me just go. So 2013, I packed my bags and I went to South Africa, went back to Toronto. So, anyways, I've taken you all the way back, but that's when my desire for South Africa came to be. Fast forward 2021, when I went to my cousin's wedding and having been to Cape Town, I like the love for South Africa never went away. And I would apply for jobs here and there, and nothing would come, you know, nothing would, not even a call back, not even an email back, nothing. So I just kind of like put it on the back burner and said, so when I went to my cousin's wedding, that love that I had forced myself to repress resurrected again. And I got back and I just was not comfortable. I just felt restless. Let me say, I felt restless in Canada. I just realized that my time was up. There was nothing left for me in Canada. I started looking at options. I started hearing more people are like leaving, traveling around, finding opportunities outside of Canada. And I just realized that I think I'm ready to leave. I don't know where I'm going, what I'm going to do, but I'm ready to leave. Ghana wasn't really a place I was considering. So anyways, 2022, I went back to South Africa for, to celebrate my 40th, but one of my girlfriends was also celebrating her 40th. She and I had become very close, and I was like, okay, you know what? I would really love for us to hang out with her in SA. And I think I don't even recall. But yeah, we had gotten close. We were talking all the time, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna come to SA. She was also turning 40, so I was like, why not go around her birthday? And I had a really good time in South Africa. I really did. And I had rented an Airbnb, so I had my own place, I had my space. But the desire to move to South Africa wasn't strong as before because it was a very different time. Like the whole time I was there, I felt like I had to look over my shoulder. And that was I have no grievance against South Africa per se, but I just felt like I had to look over my shoulder because everybody was reminding me, keep your phone in your bag, do this, it's not as safe as before. So as much as I enjoyed it, I just didn't want to live a life where I had to keep being cautious as I'm walking around just because of my safety and what's not. And so I remember a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, I don't know if it was around that time, he was also based in Kenya. I remember. But he had talked about like he and his wife, he had relocated to Kenya for a bit with his wife, and he just had this strong desire. So I started to look like I was like, okay, you know, for me, I said, okay, I'm open to opportunities. I don't know where. I was looking at the Middle East. I was looking at South America, anywhere but Canada. I was like, maybe I'll, look at parts of Europe and all of that. But I wanted to be somewhere where I felt like I could have quality of life. So I said it could either be South Africa or Kenya. And my cousin and my friend would speak so highly of Kenya. So I started looking for opportunities. And I even looked in Rwanda because I was like, hey, it's Africa. I didn't really look in Ghana because I was like, "Ugh, I'm not ready for Ghana." But I was just like, let me look at what opportunities are in Africa, in East Africa, in South Africa. And again, I'll put my resume forward. I would apply for roles. Not, I would look at like headhunting companies, all that jazz, and nothing, not a callback, not even a we received your email, nothing. It was like radio silence. And fast forward to 2023, I meet my ex-husband and we're planning our wedding, and then we had made a decision that, it would make sense for me to move to the UK because, he had he has children and he has his custody arrangement, so it just makes sense for him to for me to move to the UK since I really didn't have children, I didn't have property, there was nothing. I didn't even have like the greatest job. I had a job, it was okay, and it did what it did. So there was nothing that was holding me in Canada other than my niece, right? My niece is the love of my life. So, but even then, like, it's not like I was her primary caregiver. She has her parents. So, I had to live my life. So for me, it was just like, it just made sense. And because I was already feeling that itch about moving from Canada and looking for greener pastures, I just said, hey, maybe my opportunities in the UK. And, you know, some of my best friends are based in the UK. I have a lot of family in the UK. It's the middle ground between Ghana and Canada. So both, like, my parents can easily just, fly out to the UK, quick 6 hours, and I could easily go home. If anything, I closer to Ghana than I was from Canada. And being that older sibling, there's this, you want to be close to your parents, especially as they're getting older, because there is this burden on you that you end up having to be the one that you feel like they need to depend on. And older siblings will understand this, especially oldest daughters. You have that kind of responsibility towards your parents. I said, okay, that would keep me, it would be a halfway point and also close enough. Like, Canada is just like a quick 6, 7 hour journey. If I need to go back or my siblings want to come, it's a halfway point. And as you all know, what happened, um, that didn't work out. So when my marriage ended and I immediately I came to Ghana, like after my ex had asked for our marriage to end, I quickly changed my ticket to come to Ghana because I just needed that comfort. I needed my family. I also wanted to come home and meet with his family and try to have them talk and share my story to see how best we can get him to change his mind and everything. So I came home for a month, and let me just backtrack a bit. When we came down in November for our traditional, something shifted inside of me. There was, I think, when I saw how, coming home, the community, seeing friends who were doing quite well, you know, there was this desire for me. I just something just like a light bulb went off. So I remember I used to have conversations with my ex and we'll talk about like, hey, maybe we need to consider moving to Ghana. And my dad was like, you know what? The way the West is going, you'll be better. I'll help you guys establish yourselves in Ghana, yada, yada, yada. So the desire became very, very strong. So I remember like I would constantly talk about like, you know what, we need to start thinking about setting up shop in Ghana. Let's start looking at what our options are. He was keen, he was interested, but I wouldn't say he was keen because obviously he has his kids. And I was like, you know what? If you get a really good job in Ghana, we can be able to send money back to to your ex-wife to help with the kids, and the kids can come and spend their holidays with us. You can just, I'm sure your ex-wife will be reasonable enough to reconsider the terms of the custody and all of that. The kids are also, they're becoming teenagers too. So um, I'm sure they'll be excited about coming, having a place to come to in Ghana and all of that, excuse to travel on their holidays to come home and see their dad instead of just having to be in the UK and seeing you. Like it gives them a reason, a vacation, right? So I just don't know. I was just feeling really, really drawn. And I'm sorry that this is becoming really long-winded, but I'm getting to a point. So hopefully I can wrap this up in 15, this whole thing, podcast in a few minutes. But anyways, so when my marriage ended, I came home and I spent 1 month in Ghana and I didn't want to go back. I did not want to go back to Canada. But my dad, he told me, he said, listen, you want to come home? I'll help sort you out. I'll see if I can reach out to my firm, see if we can get you something, maybe an opportunity to work at the firm. And I said, okay. So I sent my CV in or resume and I went back to Canada. I just went back, went back to my job, but I felt restless. I didn't have the desire to do anything. I would literally spend my days indoors. I think I remember that summer, I was sad because, first of all, my marriage had ended. I'd already said my goodbyes. Everybody had anticipated that I was leaving and then I'm back. And I just felt like I didn't belong in Canada anymore. Like I'd said my goodbyes. Why am I back here? So I remember I just felt like I didn't belong. Thankfully, the opportunity worked out. I got through the interview process. I went through the screening process. I went through the whole shebang. Like it's not an easy thing to get a job where I work. So I managed to pass all those hoops or jump through all those hoops and I got the opportunity and immediately I booked my ticket and left. But, even during that time, I was still applying for jobs in South Africa, looking at Kenya, I was looking at whatever I could get, still radio silence. Then I come to Ghana and I was like, okay, I'm gonna work for the firm. We had we have somewhat consolidated, so now we're one big Africa firm. So we did a lot more work with our, counterparts in different parts of the different firms around around the African continent and stuff. And I was like, I had some of the partners one of the partners will always say like, you guys should look at working at other firms, look taking up secondments, yada yada yada. And my dad would always talk about like the how important it is to go on secondments. It really helps with your career and all of that. So I was like, sure, like why not? So I think I when they introduced the mobility program at my firm, I immediately signed up. And they asked on the form, they asked, okay, so which regions do you want to go to? Do you want to go to either West, which is like Nigeria or Ghana, or would you like to go to East, which is Kenya, or would you like to go to South Africa, or would you like to go, or you don't have a preference? And initially, I was just going to put South Africa because I mean, this was my opportunity to go to South Africa. And I said, I'm just going to put, no preference because I didn't want to, you know, for lack of what am I trying to say? I didn't want to, do as such why is the English not coming? I didn't want to restrict myself. I didn't want to close off my options because you never know where an opportunity will come up. Fast forward a few months later, I was at work talking to one of my coworkers, and another coworker is like, "Hey, by the way, your job is online." She said, "Adra, your job is online." I was like, What do you mean my job is online? Like, are they getting rid of me? Are they trying to apply? So I went online, immediately checked the email, and they're like, "Oh, there's a public affairs manager role that had come up in corporate affairs, and it's for Southern Africa." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Mind you, in Ghana, we don't really do much public affairs. So I don't have that much experience in public affairs, just bits and bobs of here and there. But we don't have an established public affairs section of corporate affairs. I mean, I'm the only corporate affairs person in the Ghana firm alongside my partners. So I do everything that is incorporated and with the support of our clients and markets team. So I really was like, okay. And there wasn't much of a job description. It was just a very basic, generic, whatever. So I went ahead and I applied. I said, what the heck? Let me apply. So I did. After I'd applied, I think 2 days later, I was like, let me go back to the posting to read through it again, just in case I had missed something. I mean, what difference does it make now that I'd already applied? So there was no way I would have been able to retract my, application. And mind you, the deadline had passed. So it's like it was gone. And then I saw that there was a link to the actual JD. And when I looked at the JD, I said, there is no way in hell I would get this job. No way in hell. Anyway, so I kind of just, forgot about it and moved on with my life. And then a random day, I get a message from someone in South Africa that says, "Hey, you've been scheduled for an interview." I was like, "What?" Needless to say, it was such a short um window for to prepare. I barely did any preparations for the interview. I kid you not. It was such a short window. I think I was overwhelmed. I think I was just like nervous. I just didn't know how to prepare. And I remember I was talking to one of my best friends, and I was telling him like, "Oh, I have an interview tomorrow." He's like, "Have you prepared?" I said, "Yeah, not really." And he said, "You better get off this phone and go and prepare." And even then, I barely did any kind of preparations. I just said, "You know what? I'm even surprised that I got this interview." Maybe nobody else applied, so they're like, "Why? What? Well, why not?" So I said, "You know what? I'm going to pray to God that this interview just goes as well as it's supposed to go." And because I knew some deep down, I was like, I'm not gonna get this job. So, not that I wasn't gonna prepare, but I just didn't feel very hopeful. But I said, why not? So I did a little bit of preparation, went to this interview, and I kid you not, I never been in an interview that I wouldn't say it was an easy interview, but it was so seamless. There were hardly any questions related to the job or the role. And I was just like shocked. Mind you, so that happened. I went about my life. And, with all the things going on with South Africa, I kind of was like, okay, it's a good thing that I haven't heard back from them. Maybe I'm not supposed to get it. And I know that there's a process. Like, once you've done, I had to do a case study, which I did. I had to go through an interview with, you know, what you would call it, the ones you'll be reporting to, and then you'll go through a partner interview. So when I hadn't heard back about the partner interview, I just assumed I didn't get the job. Then one day, as I was on sick leave, I was going to get some testing done, and I remember I prayed to God. I said, God, I just need my life to change. I just need a change. I need you to take me somewhere that, there is just a difference in my life. I get home and I had to jump on my work laptop to pass on some work to my subordinate. And I see a message from my now current boss, and she said, congratulations, you have emerged the top candidate for the role. Please set a meeting for us to discuss your secondment in Kenya and South Africa. I was like, what? I forgot that I was sick. I started jumping up and down, screaming down the house. I'm like, Daddy, I got the job. My dad was home. And I was like, Daddy, I got the job. I got the job. So, anyways, I was in such disbelief. I had to even go on Google, on Gemini and ChatGPT and like put in her words. And I said, are you sure this means that I got the job? I was in disbelief. Then I got a call from our HR and she confirmed it. But and fast forward, here I am, I'm in Kenya, and, I'm going to be leaving for South Africa afterwards. And then my boss has mentioned that, I'll have to go to Nigeria for a year as well, for a month as well. So I say this to say that, you know, God's timing, like sometimes when we don't hear things happening, when we're not getting the feedback or it just seems like it's not going to happen, you know, if God has put a desire in your heart, no matter what it is, if there's a desire in your heart and for some reason you cannot let it go, but no matter what you do, it's not happening. I want you to know this. It's just not time. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that in God's own perfect timing, it will happen. And today I was doing my end of year performance review with my soon to be former boss, my former partner, and we're going through my goals for the year for this FY. One of my goals was to go on secondment in either Nigeria or South Africa. And then she said, well, look at that, you're on it at this point in time, and look at how God works. And I remember that one of our head of HR, there was a meeting that I wanted to be a part of, and she said, well, you're not a manager yet, but I'll save you a seat in October when you become a manager. But mind you, we don't even know who's going to get promoted until September, at the end of September. So she had spoken it into existence. And so I remember when she called me to tell me I got the job, I said, you told me like in October I'll be like, you'll save me a seat, And she said, can you imagine, I just want to say to someone out there, we don't know what the future holds. I look back at my life in 2023, 2024, when my marriage ended and I was sad and miserable and crying my eyes out. If only I knew what God had in store for me in 2026, I would have been like, why am I crying? If I had stayed married, I may not have had the opportunity that I have today. And here I am globetrotting, going from place to place. I just wanted to go to South Africa. God has given me Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. And I just want to say that sometimes you have to go through certain situations or issues or whatever to get to where he's taking you. He never took that. The desire might be suppressed. The desire might not, might the desire will never go away, but you kind of learn to accept and move on. But then, so one day, something that you had desired or prayed for years ago, a week ago, months ago, will come to fulfillment and you'll be just shocked. And whatever God, and I was here, I was just waiting to be a manager in my role in Ghana. Like, just promote me to be, and God said, and mind you, this role wasn't for just Southern Africa. Let me just say that. It ended up being an Africa role. So now I'm working for Africa, meaning I'm going to work for all, you know, in my firm, there are three regions. It's West, East, and South. I applied for a role that was just going to be for Southern. And God is like, no, I have a plan for you. You're going to do all regions, right? And you're going to work for the Africa firm. You're not going to work for one member firm. You're working for the regional. So it's just mind blowing when I look at my life and I started talking about South Africa in 2012. I wanted to move. And mind you, I'm not going to be moving there. I'm going to be there for, a short period of time, but I still get that experience. The same way I'm in Kenya for a month, I'm going to South Africa for 2 and Nigeria for a month. Like, who would have thought, as they will say, who would have thunk it that this would be where I am? So, my message today is don't give up that desire. Those of you who are seeking relationships and marriages and you think that it's not going to happen, it will. If that desire hasn't left you, it's because it's still God's plan for you. He just has a bigger plan in store. It might be something, I'm not going to promise it's going to be mind blowing or whatever. Of course it's going to be mind blowing, but it's going to be, you can't even fathom how it's going to come to be, right? Those of you waiting for that job, it's going to come. Just keep doing what you need to do. Just keep trusting and believing and living. Most importantly, keep living your life. Sometimes you'll have to go through it, you'll go through diversions and you'll have to go through some valleys and some rivers and some hills and whatever, but you will get to that destination. And it's going to be better than you would have thought. I'm going to say something very controversial here, and so don't hold me. If there is, even for those who are seeking a relationship, there might be that one person that you are desiring so much. There's a guy or there's a girl that you really, really like. And at the moment, it just seems very, you know, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, right? You've prayed about it, you're trusting God, it just seems like, hey, it might not happen with this particular person. And maybe it will not. But maybe God is like, I just need you to focus on what is in front of you. Focus on what I have before you. There's still some things I'm doing with this person. There's still some things I'm doing with you. Eventually, I'm going to bring you guys together, and it's going to be even greater or better than you ever thought it would be, right? Sometimes the silence, sometimes when it doesn't seem likely, that is when, things are going to happen. When it just doesn't like, I am telling you, I didn't even get, for all the jobs I applied to, for all the opportunities I looked at, I didn't even get an email back to say, hey, we received your application. Or we're considering somebody. I didn't even get that. So when you don't even get, like, every job opportunity or every place you get whether you get the job or, whether you get called for an interview or not, there is some kind of automated email that you get. I wasn't even getting that. Nothing. Not even, oh, do this, nothing. So that's why I'm saying sometimes it will just seem like so bleak. There is no chance in hell that you're going to get it. And you start to just say, you know what, let me just focus on something else. And maybe something else will come your way. And that will just fall apart. And you will have to go through a different journey. But eventually you will get to that thing that you've prayed about, you've desired. Who knows, that person, or God will send you a better version of that person. I don't know. But I'm just saying that don't give up. Keep believing. If the desire is not dead, that means God isn't done. It's going to happen. As cliche as it sounds, it will happen in His time. Just keep being hopeful, keep living your life, keep believing and trusting. So, yeah, that's my story of my secondment. I hope it's brought some hope to someone today. Um, I hope someone is whoever listens, who feels like the world is silent and there's nothing, don't, just hold on. It will happen. Unless it's absolutely like you're designing something so like don't even bother. Like whatever, if a man is treating you like garbage and trash and he's, abusing you and everything, you're holding on to him and saying, God is gonna, girl, guy, whoever, let that go. But sometimes things just don't seem like they're supposed to be at the moment. They can turn around, but you just have to trust and believe, or a better version of that thing will come. Anyways, so that's my story for today. Um, yeah. So just like, share, subscribe. I'll be back next week, and yeah, there'll be more to talk about. So look forward to catching up. Remember, life doesn't always get easier with time, but with every season, we become more seasoned.
Yeah.